He was young, hungry, and feared. A name whispered in hallways and shouted on corners. A kid who learned the code early. Power, respect, and a green light that could change a night. The blocks knew his moves before the news did. The rules were simple and brutal. The brand was louder than sirens, and every choice pushed him higher, faster, colder. This is not a legend. It is the playbook of a shot caller who rose before most finished school. No spoilers, no soft edges, only the path, the pressure, and the price of being the youngest boss in a crew built on fear. Join us as we step into the rise, the orders, and the shadow he cast across Long Island. MS-13 started in Los Angeles in the 1980s. Salvadoran immigrants built it to protect their own from other street crews. What began as defense turned into a real criminal outfit. The beef with 18th Street got hot, and that rivalry never cooled. The name Mara Salvatrucha tied back to Salvadoran roots and street slang, and the number 13 linked to the letter M, or respect for the Mexican mafia. The vibe changed fast. What was once about safety now moved like a gang ready to run turf, and that shift set the stage for the kind of leader our story is heading toward. After the 1992 Civil War ended, a lot of MS-13 members were deported to El Salvador. The same thing happened after arrests in the US. That pushed the gang into Central America, where it took hold and grew. From there, it spread again into the US and across borders. By the time the cycle kept spinning, MS-13 was active in many parts of the United States, Canada, Mexico, and Central America. Most members stayed Central American, especially Salvadoran. The network kept stretching and the streets felt it. The pipeline that moved people also moved the game. There is debate about the name's roots. Some link it to La Mara in San Salvador and guerrilla history. Some say Mara means swarm, taken from marabunta ants. Salvatrucha reads as Salvadoran and trucha. Stay alert, whatever version you pick. The identity spoke to being sharp, fast, and ready. Inside the gang, the code ran on merciless payback. Jumping in took 13 seconds of beating. Some clicks made a body the price of entry. When a set carries rules like that, respect is fear, and fear is control, and control is how a young boss can rise. Most members are poor young men and teens. Many come as unaccompanied minors, land in schools that won't take them, and end up stuck at home where the set is waiting. Recruitment is often forced. In El Salvador, kids get approached on the way to school or church. Inside lockup, the pressure gets worse. Victims are often Central American too, and many are minors. Once pulled in, day-to-day life can look like hustling small drugs, theft, and extortion. It's not glamour, it's survival mixed with violence. That mix makes leadership young and brutal. MS-13 has a heavy tattoo culture. MS, Salvatrucha, devil horns, clique names. But by 2007, some moved away from face ink to keep a low profile. Hands do a lot of the talking. Devil horn style signs thrown near the face. A quick flash to say who's who. The message is simple. We're here. We see you. Don't slip. When the set wants to blend, it blends. When it wants to shout, it shouts. That switch helps a young Jefe play both Ghost and Hammer. The gang is loud with violence. They hit enemy crews, but families and neighbors can get swept up too. Buses burned. Officials and community leaders targeted. Femicide and even infanticide appear in the stories coming out of El Salvador. Legal impunity feeds the cycle, with very few convictions. A Nassau County DA set it straight in 2017. The crimes that we're talking about are brutal. Their weapon of choice is a machete. That means hacked limbs and scenes cops don't forget. When machetes are standard and mercy is rare, the person calling shots can be barely grown and still feared like an OG. MS-13 runs in cliques. In the US, sets are loosely tied, and local conditions shape what they do. In El Salvador, it's tighter. The Ranfla Nacional, the command and control, steers violence and murders both at home and in the US. That top-down voice meets street-level hustle. It creates space for fast risers who can handle both the call from the Ranfla and the stress on the corner. That's where a young shot caller can climb fast if he delivers. By 2009, the estimates ran 30,000 to 50,000 worldwide, with thousands in the US. The FBI saw the biggest threat in the West and Northeast, while the Southeast was heating up. LA cliques claimed pieces of Westlake, Pico Union, Koreatown, East Hollywood, and the Valley. New York sets held parts of Queens and Long Island. Central America stayed strong. El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and expansion in Mexico followed the Ranfla's push. Even Spain saw cliques before a crackdown. The map kept getting new pins. A wide map makes it easier for a young boss to build a name across zip codes. The sheet on activities is long. Drugs, guns, people, murder, rape, assault, kidnapping, Idaho theft, prostitution, robbery, auto theft, and extortion. Members who work straight jobs often use fake papers in construction, restaurants, delivery, and landscaping. Abandoned buildings turn into hangouts, meetings, and deals. Officials warn the gang wants to be a national brand, organized like the mafia or big cartels. When the hustle list gets that deep, anyone ruthless and organized can rise quick. That's the kind of lane a young leader can drive fast. The FBI built a national task force in 2004 and later set up a gang info center. ICE launched Operation Community Shield. By 2011, there were tens of thousands of arrests tied to the push. In 2012, the U.S. Treasury froze assets and labeled the crew a transnational criminal organization. Later sweeps like Operation Raging Bull hit hundreds. Canada watched borders and warned police about gang flight. Cops kept saying the same thing. This crew is violent like few others. A Massachusetts state police commander put it bluntly after a big 2016 case. "I've never seen a more violent gang out there." The pressure was heavy, but the machine kept grinding. Allies include cartels like Sinaloa and other Serrano-linked gangs. Rivals include 18th Street, Bloods, Latin Kings, Norteños, and Tiny Rascal Gang. The fighting shifts with the map, but the 18th Street beef stays a core story. Old friendships turned to open war long ago. Every rivalry brings fresh blood and new orders. That is where a young shot caller earns his stripes. All of this, the spread, the code, the machetes, the clicks, the terror tag, built the world that raised a very young MS-13 leader in the US. His name is Alexi Saenz, and on these streets, age doesn't save you, rank does. The question is how he climbed so fast, who he answered to, and how the orders went down. That's where we go next. From January to April 2016, cops say MS-13 stacked bodies on Long Island, with the NYPD tying the set to 17 murders in that short window. The vibe was fear on every block. People heard the whispers about the Sailors Clique and how fast the green lights were flying. That wave is the backdrop for how a young boss, Alexi Saenz, turns into the name everyone fears next. Back in 2010, Alexi lands from El Salvador and walks into Islip High. The cafeteria is where scouts clock him as desperate and angry. Weeks later, he is already throwing MS-13 signs. In months, he's collecting taxes. Give it about 2 years, and now he is giving kill orders. The logic is simple and cold. Target the lonely ones with nothing to lose, make the crew their family, and by the time they blink, they're in too deep to climb out. January 28, 2016. Inside the Jock Arena Deli, the sailors spot Michael Johnson and tag him as a blood. In their words, he becomes food. Blasty gets top approval, calls in soldiers, and lures Johnson to the woods on a smoke pretense. The ambush hits with overwhelming force. Bat shots, knife stabs, machete hacks. Sirens chase them off, but the damage is done. Days later, cops find Johnson's body, and the autopsy calls out blunt and sharp force injuries. The clique has sent its first 2016 message. April 29, 2016. The sailors suspect 19-year-old Oscar Acosta flipped to 18th Street after riding with MS, so he gets greenlit. They lure him near Brentwood Elementary School, beat him with tree limbs, gag him, and call Blasty. Logistics are tighter now. Burials planned. Weapons split between cars. Alibis rehearsed. Acosta goes in the trunk of Blasty's car and rides to the abandoned Pilgrim State grounds, where, per Blasty's direction, they carry him deeper into the woods, machetes, flashing until the breathing stops, then a shallow grave. 5 months later, cops find what the set left behind. Dotted starts at a sailors' meeting in Blasty's house, where he tells the crew to hunt rivals who disrespected the set. And that same night, a car crew hits Apple Street, 2 guns barking, a machete flashing, 2 men laid up, one by a bullet, one by blade, and the soldiers stash the guns back at Blasty's spot, a dry run for the chaos about to hit Suffolk. The beef with the goon squad stays hot, so when Blasty and a soldier spot suspected rivals around Lukens Avenue, he rallies the clique, splits them into 2 cars, posts himself to watch for police, and lets 2 armed members step up and fire. Nobody gets hit, but a stray round drills a sleeping neighbor's headboard, and the neighborhood hears what the sailors can do on a regular weeknight. By mid-year, the pattern is clear. The sailors' clique is moving like a death squad, not a sloppy crew. Meetings feeling like roll calls for who lives and who dies. The closet an arsenal, not a wardrobe. After another meeting at Blasty's house, the cars roll out hunting in Central Islip. In Brentwood, they spot 27-year-old Marcus Bohannon on Lowell Avenue and tag him blood. 2 gunners step out and light him up 9 times in the head, neck, and chest while Blasty drives the crew out. And a day later, the island knows a new boss is making his name in daylight and darkness. Freeman Avenue is rival ground. so Blasty tells soldiers to buy gas for a hit, loops the block while the crew pours and torches a car in the driveway. The first ride explodes and cooks another, a loud message for a neighborhood already feeling taken hostage. September 5th, 2016, Marcus Bohannon is greenlit and killed, but Blasty wants a louder message, and when a school confrontation hits his pride, the order comes hard in Spanish, Las chicas tienen que morir, and a hunting party forms fast with Selvin, Flash, Chavez, Enrique, Turkey Portillo, plus 4 more. Baseball bats bought at Sports Authority, machetes sharpened, a stolen Honda ready, and reggaeton turned up to keep the blood hot. Tuesday, September 13th, 2016, around 7:43 p.m. on Staley Street in Brentwood, a jogger finds 15-year-old Nisa Mickens in the grass. The injuries scream machete and bat. It looks like a hit, not a random swing. A veteran detective keeps it blunt. This wasn't random. This was a statement. Someone wanted these girls erased. The block goes quiet, but the crew is not done. 24 hours later, just 1 street away, police find 16-year-old Kayla Cuevas, Nisa's best friend, murdered. The same way. 2 girls, same rage, same weapons. The echo is designed. This is how terror spreads, fast and wide. The scene tells the story before anyone speaks. Whoever did this wanted the whole neighborhood to understand the new rules. Around 7:15 to 7:19 p.m. that same night, Kayla and Nisa are walking home from Sweet 16 planning. Kayla starts a text to her mom. "Soon, mama, walking with Nisa." She never sends it. At dinner, Blasty gets the confirmation and answers with one word. Good. The message lands harder than the news. Police first treat the girls like runaways. Hours get wasted. Kayla's mom, Evelyn Rodriguez, does not let it slide. She runs searches, knocks doors, blasts social media, and asks, "Wait for what? For my baby to come home in a body bag?" That rage becomes gasoline. The hunt tightens. The set starts to feel the pressure. In this stretch, Alexi Saenz is Salvadoran American, tied to MS-13 in New York, and turns feared fast. He and his brother Gyro become known hitters after a series of jobs, including 2 innocent civilians who got mistaken for members of the Bloods in 18th Street. Mistakes like that are how a crew shows it does not care about fallout. It cares about control. They tag 15-year-old Javier Castillo as 18th Street, convince him to ride to Freeport for a smoke, link up with Blasty and others, and steer him to Calmetto Park, where the machetes do the talking. A hole gets dug, and his body will not be found until late October 2017. Another hole in a family that never heals. October 10th, 2016, Javier Castillo, 15, gets murdered, and Alexi is named as one of 4 gunmen. No trial on the street because suspicion is enough, and the rhythm is steady. Identify, lure, swarm, vanish. 3 nights later, October 13th, 2016, the sailors cruise for rivals, spot 34-year-old Dewan Stacks. Blasty authorizes the hit and loops the area for cops while 3 soldiers jump out on American Boulevard with 2 machetes and a bat. The strikes to his face and head so severe he is almost unrecognizable, the block waking up red, and weeks later his body is found. The money engine keeps the war fed from April 2016 to March 2017. Blasty and his brother, Gyro, move wholesale cocaine and marijuana to sailors for street sales. Profits stack back to him to buy guns, restock dope, and wire cut-ups to leadership in El Salvador. The gang tax running like a meter, so the set is not just hunting, it is financing its own war. Prosecutors say weekly meetings pick targets, recruit kids, and stock weapons, and the wires catch Blasty's voice hard and clear. "We're soldiers. This is war. You show mercy, you paint a target on your back." And when someone doubts him, he cracks back. "You think this is a democracy?" That is how a 22-year-old plays big homie. Make it war. Erase debate. January 30th, 2017, morning at El Campesino Deli in Central Islip, 29-year-old Esteban Alvarado Bonilla wears a jersey with 18. The set reads it as 18th Street. They grab a mask and a second car. Blasty hands over the click's 9mm. A masked shooter walks in and drills Alvarado Bonilla multiple times. 1 bullet passes through and hits a female employee in the chest who survives. The shooter walks and the deli turns into a crime scene that shows how reckless and loud the sailors got. That same date, a man named Alvarado Bonilla owes around $200 to the sailors' clique, and that debt becomes a death sentence as 6 attackers move for 12 minutes. A video shows their shadows like a wolf pack, and his body turns up 3 weeks later in the woods. The lesson's simple. If the set says you pay, or you get buried. Early 2017, about 40 members are active, and Blasty calls each soldier a bullet in my gun. With money coming from drugs on Brentwood corners, taxes on immigrant shops, guns moved up from Virginia, and human trafficking out of Central America, while a detective puts it plain that the community is on lockdown. Witnesses scared of MS-13's round-the-clock protection. Later, Central Islip Park turns into a massacre site as over a dozen attackers rush 4 young men: Justin Licura, 16, Michael Lopez, 18, Jorge Tigre, 18, and Jefferson Villalobos, 20. And the violence stretches over 100 yards. And even if Blasty did not give this order, it happens on his turf with the culture of hunting parties still under his blessing, the tone the same, overwhelm the target, and leave a scene people fear to describe. The heat finally draws a bigger net. An FBI special agent pulls a multi-agency team together with Fed, state, and Suffolk County working phones, wires, and flips. 23 lines tapped, surveillance on core members, and informants staring at deportation start to talk, with one line chilling the room: "Better to kill an innocent than let an enemy live," a sentence that shows how far the set will go to protect the brand. Even when he lands in Nassau County Jail on unrelated charges, Blasty keeps the machine running with contraband phones, coded messages, and tattoo guns drifting through the tier. And prosecutor Artie McConnell says younger members bragged about getting a nod from Blasty in lockup, like a shout out from a big homie, because a boss who can greenlight from a cell is a boss the crew will still salute. Central Islip, March 2nd, 2017. 4 young men sit in a federal courtroom like it is just another day. A judge warns they could face the death penalty for the 2 girls killed in September. One of them, Alexi Saenz, grins and spins in his chair. He barely looks at the crying relatives in the back. The vibe is cold. The room understands what kind of set moves like that and how bold they feel under a federal roof. That same morning, the feds hit Suffolk County with a hard sweep. 5 get cuffed on Long Island as part of a bigger takedown of 13 adult MS-13 members. By evening, 14 are in custody, 2 not yet in hand. The message is simple. The clique thought it was hunting. Now it is the one getting hunted. At noon, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District, Robert L. Capers, steps up in the federal courthouse and drops the indictments. He says his FBI Long Island Gang Task Force ran point. Then he cuts through the noise with a line that lands heavy. For far too long on Long Island, MS-13 has been meting out its own version of the death penalty. The press writes it down. The streets hear it louder. March 2nd, 2017, the second superseding indictment hits federal court in Central Islip. 13 MS-13 members get charged on 41 counts: racketeering, 7 murders, attempts, assaults, arson, weed conspiracy, and gun work. During a search at the home of Alexi Saenz and Saenz, agents grab a loaded 9mm, stacks of ammo, including .38 and .357, machetes, a sword, a hatchet, knives, marijuana package for sale, ledgers, and MS-13 gear. The paper also lays murder charges on A. Saenz, J. Saenz, Selvin Flash Chavez, and Enrique Turkey Portillo for Nisa and Kayla. It lists the Jose Peña Hernandez murder from June 3, 2016, and pulls in more names: Elmer Alexander Lopez, Smiley, German Cruz Bad Boy, and 2 fugitives. Some juveniles are charged under seal. The roll call of defendants reads like a roster: Strong, Dizzy, Muerte, Mente, Oso, Kraken, Little Smiley, and more. On paper, the machine looks big. In the street, the fear still feels bigger. On the opposite side from the gang families sits Evelyn Rodriguez. She is calm on the outside, but the weight is real. "I'm really overwhelmed," she says after court. Her presence is a wall the set cannot clown. She is here for her daughter. She is here to make sure nobody forgets what went down on that block. The trial for the 13 adults is set for April 10th. Capers lays out immigration status like evidence on a table. 10 of the 13 adults are undocumented. 3 of the men charged with the direct roles in Kayla and Nisa's murders are undocumented. Alexi Saenz, 22, charged in the killings, is a legal permanent resident. The facts land without spin. The names are the same ones the community has been whispering for months. Earlier arrests tied to another body stack the fear even higher. 4 gang members get picked up for the killing of Jose Peña Hernandez, 18. His remains are found near a hospital in October. The same paper ties Hernandez to a 2015 bat and pipe assault near the Brentwood East schools. The picture gets darker. The set does not just chase rivals, it cleans up what it thinks are leaks. The woods become a second courtroom. The trees hold what people are too scared to say. The indictment spells it out. In the months before the murders, Kayla has disputes with MS-13 members and associates. A week before the killing, there is an altercation at Brentwood High. Revenge gets promised. On September 13, 2016, Chavez, A. Saenz, J. Saenz, Portillo, and others agreed to hunt rivals. 2 juveniles ride along. Chavez's car spots Kayla and Nisa on Staley Street. They call the leaders. Alexi and J-Ro authorize the hit. Chavez pulls up. Portillo and the others jump out and swing bats and a machete. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Timothy Sinai calls the killings severely depraved, says the girls took head and face blows plus cuts, and calls the level of brutality close to unmatched. He says the signs point to a gang hit. The department boosts security around Brentwood High. The quote travels, and the whole island understands what kind of enemy is on their streets. Capers gives the first long breakdown of what happened to the girls. Kayla is beefing with gang members at school and online. Her friend Nisa is with her. Selvin Chavez and Enrique Portillo, both 19, and 2 juveniles, are cruising, hunting rivals. They spot the girls and call the Saenz brothers. On the phone, it is Funny and Blasty. The order comes quick. The crew jumps Nisa first with bats and machetes. Her injuries are so bad she's unrecognizable. Kayla runs. She cuts left into the woods by a cul-de-sac, but they catch her. The life ends fast. The car peels off. The street is left with silence and 2 bodies. This was the worst I had ever seen, Commissioner Sinny says about that crime scene. The federal charges hit like a roll call of the clique's playbook. Racketeering, 7 murders, attempted murders, obstruction of justice, arson, conspiracy. Since the girls were killed, Suffolk County Police have arrested more than 125 MS-13 members. But this Thursday batch stands out. These arrests come with federal weight. This is the kind of paperwork that turns green lights into prison lights. The United States Attorney calls the gang's mission murder and says they will dismantle the MS-13. The FBI's assistant director in charge says everyone has a right to safety, from Brentwood to the Hamptons, and they are not leaving. Commissioner Sinny says the department promised the families justice and meant it. The message is steel. We will not stop until this crew is off our streets. MS-13 has a hold on Long Island for a decade, and 2016 is especially violent. The response is wide. More patrols, more pressure, more cuffs. Sinai says violent crime in Suffolk County drops by 45%. The numbers bring a little air back to the blocks, but the mothers still sleep light. The memory of that September night does not fade when the stats look good. Evelyn Rodriguez remembers the exact moment the news hits. Her husband calls her at work. Police came to the house. The killers of Kayla and Nisa have been caught. She breaks down and heads straight to the chapel where she works. Then she finds her voice. Today is a celebration. She thanks law enforcement. She talks to her daughter like she is right there. I know Kayla is up in heaven saying, "Mom, you did it." The courthouse hears her. The set hears her louder. Evelyn speaks before Congress, meets the president, and stands at vigils, telling the world, "They took my baby but not my voice." 2 years and 1 day after Kayla's death, September 14, 2018, on Staley Street, she sets up a memorial. An argument turns tragic when an SUV, driven by Anne-Marie Drago, accelerates and kills Evelyn. That cruel timing lights a deeper fire under the case and under every cop chasing the Sailors clique. By 2020, multiple cooperators, including MS-13 members facing life, describe how Blasty trained hitters. They talk about how weapons send a stronger message and how they practice on trees. The evidence stack grows. Recorded orders, cell tower data, drug money trails, photos of weapons, DNA-stained clothing at burial sites, and survivor testimony like the teen girl forced to watch while Blasty boats. Tell everyone Blasty did this. The paper trail and the blood trail line up, and the story of a young shot caller becomes a case the whole island can finally read. This fight lands in the Eastern District of New York. The feds have Alexi Blasty Saenz and his brother Jairo Funny Saenz locked in. A grand jury dropped a 7th superseding indictment on October 16, 2019. It spans 75 pages and 89 counts. The paper ties the brothers to MS-13 business and capital charges for 7 killings. The docket number is 16 CR 403. The stage is set for a death penalty fight, and the judge running the show is Gary R. Brown. The government filed notices of intent to seek the death penalty in 2020. Alexi's notice hit July 15th. Jairo's notice hit November 20th. Once death is on the table, the rules get bigger. The judge leans on Supreme Court lines like death is a different kind of punishment. That means broad and timely discovery, not just the basics. The court says the feds cannot hide behind tight Rule 16 reads when life is on the line. If the government wants to use aggravators, the defense gets what it needs to fight them. The law lists mitigating factors that can save a life. One is simple street math. If another defendant or defendants equally culpable in the crime will not be punished by death, That helps the defense. The judge points to verdict sheets from other cases that use the same logic. So if others who played the same or bigger role walk away from death, that is mitigation. The court adds a catch-all too. Any fact that eases the weight can come in. If the government claims future dangerousness or leadership, it must give up material to test those claims. You cannot swing with a big aggravator and then keep the files closed. The feds tried to limit disclosures to the exact homicides tied to the Saenz brothers. The court says no, 18 U.S.C. Section 1959, and related counts that plug into the enterprise. So, the crime for mitigation does not stop at one stabbing or one shooting. It includes the gang machine that moved those hits. If the government plans to argue future danger, ongoing leadership, and jailhouse conduct, the discovery scope must match that wide angle. By early 2021, the feds unsealed an indictment against the Ramfla Nacional called the Board of Directors of MS-13. The government told the court it saw no connection between those bosses and the Saenz murders. The judge calls that view too narrow. The defense says there is some indication orders came from higher up the food chain. The court agrees that comparative culpability matters. If the big homies above Blasty are not facing death, that could be powerful mitigation. So the government has to open the files wider. The court drills into Kevin Torres, aka Inquieto. In a 2020 detention letter, the government called him the leader of the sailors clique for all of New York. It said he greenlit Oscar Acosta and set roles. It said he authorized moving Javier Castillo to Freeport. At the same time, the death notices against the Saenz brothers push a leadership aggravator on Alexi. The court notes these statements are not cleanly aligned and could shift the leadership picture. The government also flags Miguel Angel Correa Diaz as a leader who reported to El Salvador. The judge says the ongoing investigation line is too thin after years of litigation. He orders fuller disclosures on Torres, Diaz, and similar players so the jury can see who really called shots. The feds tried to limit discovery to communications where the Saenz brothers personally spoke. The court says that is not enough. If leaders were talking about green lights or classes of targets, those directives matter even if the brothers were not on the line. The order is simple. Produce any information about kill directives discussed among or for leaders named in the defense motion. In a click, the phone is the trigger. The court wants the whole call log, not just the slices that feature Blasty and funny. The court lists how many players in connected cases are not facing death. Some cannot be executed because they were juveniles. Others dodge death due to limits tied to extradition agreements. Still others have no authorization determinations. The government itself filed declinations as to at least 6 defendants after the death notices. That uneven field is classic mitigation under Section 3592A(4). If bigger or equal fish are not death eligible, the jury has a right to weigh that. The government chose to swing big on aggravators, so it must turn over the material that cuts against them. The defense wanted more time to prepare a deauthorization request to the Attorney General. The judge looked at the calendar and said enough delay. He quoted the old line without dressing it up. The perfect is the enemy of the good. He ordered both defense teams to file their deauthorization applications by January 31st, 2023. He also flagged Sixth Amendment concerns. Life and death calls cannot rest on a legal fiction that DOJ already knows everything. Defense must get discovery in time to make real arguments. The judge also notes serial requests are disfavored, but the Justice Manual allows new submissions in extraordinary circumstances. The door is not locked if the facts evolve. This order does not clean Alexi's hands. It does something else. It forces the government to show the full chain of command that ran the set. If New York sailors boss greenlit key hits, and if national bosses move policy, that changes how a jury sees leadership and future danger. It does not erase the bodies. It does not erase the roles. It tests who was truly the top shot caller and who followed orders from a higher seat. In gang terms, it separates who wrote the green light from who ran the play. The court tells the government to supplement disclosures fast. It tells defense to file deauthorization on schedule. It asks DOJ to move the review as quickly as it can. The case has public weight and years of history. The judge wants it trial ready with a full record. No shortcuts, no blind spots. In plain speak, if the government plans to push death, the government must show the whole map of the set, from the corner soldiers up to the big homies who sat above Blasty. July 10th, 2024, Central Islip Federal Court. Alexi Blasty Saenz stands up and pleads guilty to racketeering that includes 8 murders, 3 attempted murders, arson, guns, and dope money. The judge is Gary R. Brown. The deal says minimum 40, max 70 years. The United States Attorney Breon Peace lays it out with heat, saying, To say that Alexi Saenz's hands are drenched in blood does not begin to describe the multiple killings and extreme mayhem he personally directed and committed. The message is simple and final. The shot caller just owned the war he ran. Prosecutors say Blasty ran the Brentwood and Central Islip chapter of Sailors Locos, Salvatrucha's west side, one of the most violent MS-13 cliques on the East Coast. He kept rank by ordering work and doing work. Every move was about status, power, and keeping the set feared. When he said green light, the block understood the rules. Mickens' mother, Elizabeth Alvarado, spends years pushing for justice. "I just want it done. They need to pay for it, and other families. We cannot move forward," she says. George Johnson, Michael Johnson's father, calls out the courtroom claim that his son was a rival. He says Michael had bipolar disorder, and he forces himself to stay as the story is told. The grief sits in the benches like a weight nobody can lift. At the plea, Breon Peace says the office decimated MS-13 in the district and vows to keep going. The acting SCPD commissioner calls the act senseless and barbaric and hopes the plea gives the families some closure. The narrative that started in alleys and woods now runs in federal language, but the meaning is the same. A gang leader is finally facing the bill. Prosecutors tell the court that behind bars, Blasty stayed firmly entrenched. They point to photos, flashing signs, and paraphernalia, and discipline for assaults, refusals, and holding shanks and phones. They even describe a rope scheme for contraband. The story inside matches the story outside. A set boss trying to keep the brand alive while caged. Defense lawyers say Blasty is remorseful, has intellectual limits, and suffered trauma growing up. They write he was easily influenced and gullible as a high school kid and is now on a journey of redemption. In court, he says he is so sorry for the pain and loss. The families do not accept it. George Johnson calls him a coward and tells him to look up. He does not. The gap between apology and action stays wide. There is a note in the plea deal that it has a global piece. It can depend on his brother J-Ro pleading too. If the brother does not agree, the deal can be voided. The government is not only closing one case, it is pulling a whole clique into the same net. That net tightens on January 14, 2025 in Central Islip when J-Ro Funny Saenz steps up and pleads guilty to racketeering for 7 murders, 3 attempted murders, arson, guns, and the dope pipeline. Judge Gary R. Brown takes the plea. Acting U.S. Attorney Carolyn Pokorny calls the gang's work barbaric and says MS-13 turned parts of Long Island into a war zone. She says her prosecutors and the Long Island Gang Task Force are committed to holding MS-13 gang members accountable. Prosecutors lay out the structure clean. The Sailors Locos Salvatrucha's West Side clique on Long Island is strong, violent, and organized. Alexi Blasty Saenz sits as shot caller. Gyro, his brother, works as second in command. When Blasty green lights, Funny backs the play, posts rides, moves soldiers, and keeps the set in motion. The Long Island Gang Task Force pulls FBI, Suffolk County Police, Nassau County Police, State Police, Corrections, and more under one umbrella. With Gyro's plea in place, the clock starts ticking toward his sentencing while the families watch the calendar. The global piece in Alexi's deal now has its leverage. The stage is set for the number that will land on Blasty's name. In July 2025 in Central Islip, the defense pushes for 45 years and talks about change and reflection. The judge hears victims and agents. He reads the memos and looks at the record. Then Judge Brown says 68 years. United States Attorney Joseph Nocella says Blasty ran an unspeakable reign of terror. The FBI's New York chief says the bureau is relentless about crushing gang violence. The Suffolk County Police Commissioner calls Blasty a violent career criminal and thanks the teams that built the case. The time is heavy enough that the street reads it as life. The sentence covers the killings of Michael Johnson, Oscar Acosta, Marcus Bohannon, Kayla Cuevas, Nisa Mickens, Javier Castillo, Dewan Staggs, and Esteban Alvarado Bonilla. It also covers 3 attempted murders, arson on Freeman Avenue, and drug and gun work used to feed the clique. The list is long, but it matches the timeline the island remembers. During sentencing, Elizabeth Alvarado brings Nisa's ashes. "Strong and solid so that I can talk for her," she says. She tells reporters that 68 years is life because he's never going to come out. Other parents speak and none accept the apology. The pain is concentrated, but the voices do not shake. The hearing closes with the line that fits the whole story. "This person should never see the light of day again. They should not be on our street." The room hears it. The blocks hear it. It lands like a final stamp on the case. The paper trail shows why the number is that high. The island remembers Apple Street, Freeman Avenue, Stolly Street, Cow Meadow Park, the deli, the woods, and the trains. The file proves how each scene connects. Law enforcement says this is one of many sentencings in a long push to crush MS-13 and other violent crews. They say collaboration is the move from county cops to federal prosecutors. The line rings through the courthouse and across the blocks where people still look over their shoulders. Law enforcement is watching, and the next shot caller writing green lights can end up exactly where Blasty now sits. After the sentence, we zoom out. The street hears a different kind of noise: politics and other publicized crimes. Now step back and watch the lens widen. The headlines were already filthy before the presser glow. In 2011, Alonzo Casper Bruno Cornejo Ormeno gets 24 years for child prostitution after recruiting runaways. In 2012, Rances Ulites Amaya, a leader out of Springfield, Virginia, gets 50 years for trafficking girls as young as 14, luring them from schools and shelters, forcing up to 10 men a day. In September 2012, Yemi Anthony Pineda Penado, Critico, and Spike becomes the 11th MS-13 member convicted of child prostitution since 2011. These cases do not whisper. They show a set that is willing to break anyone to feed the machine. So by the time the podiums light up, the paper trail is already dirty. MS-13 turns into a theme in Republican talk, with President Donald Trump using the gang to push tougher immigration lines. Republicans blame Democrats for the violence and say sanctuary cities let sets breathe. Studies say no boost or even a drop. The debate is loud, the data is dry, and the image of the gang gets used like a prop, while families still light candles at corners that once ran red. Inside the Trump years, the Department of Justice makes MS-13 a top priority, and the microphones get hot. Trump says towns were liberated from MS-13, but that claim is false, and he says his team deported thousands and thousands of MS-13 members, which also turns out false. When the family separation policy rolls out, Homeland Security Chief Kirstjen Nielsen says MS-13 is using kids to cross the border. There is no evidence of that hustle. The story travels like a rumor in a yard, but it does not hold. The policy leaves a mark anyway, while the gang talk stays on loop and the cameras keep pointing at Long Island blocks that already feel like they have seen enough. The head count matters. In 2018, there are an estimated 10,000 MS-13 members in the United States, a stable number for over a decade. That is less than 1% of the nation's 1.4 million gang members and a similar share of gang murders. An FBI assessment says Sureño gangs, including MS-13, 18th Street, and Florencia 13, are expanding faster than other national crews. The talk says surge, the files say steady, and the fear on some streets does not care which line you quote. That tension sets the stage. Politicians push the mic, agents push the cases. The streets hear both. Fast forward to July 15, 2020, and the White House turns the heat up. The presser drops and the script changes. Attorney General William Barr says the DOJ is filing terrorism charges against Armando Eliu Melgar Diaz, a first against MS-13, and announces 21 more MS-13 arrests in New York and Nevada. He draws the picture sharp. MS-13 deals dope, but money is not the engine. It's about honor of being the most savage, bloodthirsty person you can be. He says, build a rep as a killer, not a businessman. Then Trump adds the lever. We're using terrorism, which gives us extra strength. The signal is plain. New tools, harder time, a playbook that hits different. By 2023, multiple MS-13 members and associates make the FBI and DHS wanted boards, with $10,000 rewards on each name. The list reads like a roll call the streets already know. Freddy Ivan Yandres Parada, later captured in 2024, and Cesar Humberto Lopez Larios, captured in 2024 with charges dropped and deported to El Salvador in 2025. It includes Jorge Alexander de la Cruz and Juan Antonio Martinez Abrego. It lists Francisco Javier Roman Bardales, captured in 2025. It carries Carlos Tiberio, Ramirez Valadares, and Hugo Armando Quinteros Mineros. It adds Jose Orlando Gonzalez Medina and Jose Raul Iraheta. It closes with Jesus, Guillermo Alvarado Serrano, and Ingrid Estela Hernandez. Each poster tightens the net. Each capture says the task forces are not clocking out. Republican voices say sanctuary cities fuel MS-13 activity. Research says sanctuary status shows no crime boost and can even lower crime. The Trump team says there is a surge, and the files do not back that push. Still, the narrative sticks because the images from Long Island, bats, blades, shallow graves, hit harder than graphs. The politics turn MS-13 into a symbol, while detectives keep running down real bodies with real names and real families. On January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signs an order to start labeling transnational gangs like MS-13 as foreign terrorist organizations. On February 20th, 2025, that label goes live. Canada also lists it as a terrorist group. When a gang gets the terror tag, everything changes. Charges, sentences, and how the public sees anyone linked to the set. The weight lands hard on the youngest leaders, making the deadliest calls. MS-13 is not just a local shadow. Under leadership out of El Salvador, the gang runs Programa 34 and plants 5 cliques in Spain. Providence lands in Madrid. Normandy posts in Girona. Dementes Locos and Demonios Locos split Barcelona territory. Big Crazy sets in Ibi. The mission is business fronts like bars and restaurants, money laundering and clean daylight, and setting up visas and jobs for Salvadoran members coming off bids. The bankroll comes from marijuana and cocaine sales, plus monthly dues. The structure looks corporate: cash ledgers, payroll, food service covers, but the orders run on the same code at night. Different stage, same play. Feed the brand, guard the pipeline. The Spanish cops track the pattern and answer with Operation Croissant, raids that slice across provinces. Hundreds of officers, dozens of arrests, and a case that puts alleged clique bosses like Darkin and Big Man in the dock for money wash, attempted hits, and illegal guns. The map keeps stretching, but the fingerprints match. Dues in, product out, violence on call. From TV docs to feature films, the camera has tracked the clique across years and borders, and each title shows a different angle of how the set moves. In 2005, National Geographic drops World's Most Dangerous Gang, laying out the playbook in plain sight. The ranks, the rituals, the rules that govern who lives and who gets greenlit. By 2007, History Channel's Gangland goes deep with 2 cuts. Episode 2, You Rat, You Die, runs the Brenda Paz story, how a former insider flipped, gave first-hand intel, and got found dead for it. Episode 13, Root of All Evil, peels back the drugs and prostitution racks that keep cash flowing and soldiers loyal. A reminder that the brand needs both fear and funds. In 2008, La Vida Loca lands like raw tape. Christian Poveda's documentary Putting Faces and Rules on Screen Without Polish. A street-level view of how a clique polices itself, tests loyalty, and punishes doubt. Then 2009 Sin Nombre turns the street code into a story. In Tapachula, Chiapas, we watch Willie, El Casper, schooling Benito, El Smiley, while leaders Lil Mago and El Sol call shots, and the rituals, checks, and green lights play out step by step. The camera shows the tax of loyalty, a nod from a big homie, a test with a blade, a promise you cannot take back. In 2012, La Vida Precoz y Breve de Sabina Rivas shows border heat the hard way, violence against migrants on the Guatemala, Mexico line as Giovanni, a teenage MS-13 boyfriend, pulls Sabina into the crossfire of love and set pride, and the border becomes a character as ruthless as any hitter. Fast forward to 2019, We Die Young brings it stateside in DC. Luke is trying to keep his little brother from catching a flag, while Rincon runs the branch with a heavy hand, and a veteran steps in to break the cycle, showing how the pull of family fights the pull of the set. And by May 20th, 2025, FBI True rolls out 2 season 7 episodes, locking in how the Bureau and Massachusetts State Police hunted the crew around Boston in the early 2000s. Wiretaps, flips, Dawn knocks, long trials, the full toolkit, stitched into cases that pulled the clique's mask off in New England. Different screens, same message. The brand is loud, the rules are strict, and every scene hints there is more to come. The echo of Blasty's name does not fade, it shifts. Courtroom doors close, but the block still hear his playbook. Spot, call, green light, swarm. We watched a kid turn into a shot caller and run a set where a text could become a toe tag. We watched a judge put a number on his life that sounds like the end of the line. We watched the politics try to hijack the story while the family stayed in the frame. Then the rules bent harder. Terror tools on the table, heavier counts, longer bids. The set chased cash to fund the pipeline, but the real badge was clout, because in that world a name weighs more than a bag. And when the lens pulled wide, we saw the export. Clean fronts, dirty channels, the brand kept fed from Long Island to Spain. Even the screens could not look away. Yet under every headline sat the same engine Blasty built young. Fear as law, silence as tax, orders as gospel. So now weigh it with me. For real, if a leader like Blasty falls, does the fear fall with him? Or does the next young soldier try to earn stripes by copying his script? If the feds flip the charge sheet to terrorism, does that change the code on the street or just raise the price of getting caught? Does a mother's grieving voice break the cycle, or does the set tune it out and reload? And after everything you heard, what part of Blasty's rise hit you the hardest? The age, the orders, or the cold way the machine kept moving? Do heavier charges and longer time actually slow a set like his, or only change the headlines? If you lived on those blocks, what would real safety look like to you tomorrow night? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.